I'd like to introduce you to Stephen Briggs.
I'll change chairs and you'll also there. Stop, and you can move the camera. Right, what am I going to do? This is the ramble for an hour or so. Who here hasn't got a clue who I actually am or why I'm here? Just useful to know. I'm sorry, that's my PDA turned out. My PDA just told me I'll just be here. But I'm here already, so that's all right. Right, in that case, I'll do my prepared talk. I'm Stephen Briggs, and I sort of collaborate with Terry Pratchets on the right-hand side of Disc World. I got into Disc World through Amsterdam about 15 years ago. My drama club had we'd done 2 of the Monty Python, but I'm going to move around so I can go up. We'd done 2 of the Monty Python films, adapted the stage. So we'd done Life of Brian and we'd done Holy Grail. And we went on and we did 2 Tom Sharps, Porterhouse Blue, and Blot on the Landscape. And we wanted to do, lift there, just Steve actually irritating. We wanted to do Wilt. But as we were approaching the point we wanted to do Wilt, they were just about to start filming the Mel Smith and the Griffith Jones film. And as is the way of film companies, it was therefore embargoed. We couldn't get the rights to it. And that also meant they embargoed all the Wilt trilogy, as they then were at the time. So we couldn't get to any of those. There weren't any other ones that we thought were stageable. So we looked for something else to do. And we wrote to Douglas Adams, because we wanted to do Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for quite a while, but unfortunately he had just sold the rights to Disney. So we couldn't get that. We did write to Disney, but as I mentioned previously, they're Americans, and therefore unhelpful, hidebound, don't understand about traumatic or anything else. So we just rather arsy about the whole thing. And said, no, there's no way, there's not policies about anyone to do anything that's licensed to Disney. And I could explain it in 90-seater theatre with the best will in the world. Nobody who was going to go and see us do Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was going to not go and see the film because they'd seen us stage it. Not that it was going to hit their sales particularly hard, but they were very unhelpful. So we were looking around something else to do. And one of the girls at the theatre club sort of suggested that I to have a look at Terry Pratchets' writings, which I thought I'd like them because he writes in a rather sort of Python-esque style, what he did at the time, but they're so now. And so I went to Smith's on Reading Station, Smith's and changed the name so many times. And it was a bookshop on Reading Station, and I bought more. There's of the ones they had in stock, it was the one that struck me as having the least offensive cover. I'm not a huge fan of Josh's artwork, and it wasn't. I wasn't a fantasy book reader. I hadn't read any fantasy. I didn't watch fantasy films. I knew nothing about fantasy, other than having seen, Conan the Barbarian once on TV, and that was as far as it went. I've never read Lord of the Rings all the way through. I've read The Hobbit several times, and just wasn't into fantasy. And the covers with curly artwork on this struck me with my fantasy book, and I didn't think they were interesting. But I read Morton and thought Morton was very funny, like Morton not. And went on then to read all of the ones he'd written at that time, which I think at that point was up to Guards. I liked them a lot. And Weird Sisters was the obvious one to stage because it's got a theatrical setting, it's about Shakespeare, so, from my perspective, I'd never heard of it until somebody said you want to read him. I'd never even heard of it. And most people outside the readership hadn't heard of it. It was referred to in newspapers, it was always Terry Pratchett, brackets on, writer of a series of comic fantasy novels, Terry Pratchett, a cross between Douglas Adams and It had to be sort of clicked with somebody else in order to be identified. So, from our point of view, we were staging somebody that was a risk. We knew we were with Pythons, people had heard of Pythons. We knew we were with Tom Sharp, people had actually heard of Tom Sharp. Outside his genre, because apart from anything else had been televised, so people knew of Tom Sharp. Nobody knew about Terry Pratchett outside Pratchett fandom, and we didn't know any way of how to get into Pratchett fandom, publicise the fact we were doing one of his books, because at the time very few of us had got email access or internet access, didn't know about internet fan groups and everything. So we were reduced to buying magazines like Dragon and White Wolf and things to see if there were any adverts in there that indicated that there were fan groups out there. And I think Octarine at the time was the only thing that was close to being the Terry Pratchett Fan Club. And even that wasn't Terry Pratchett Fan Club, because Terry wouldn't allow there to be a Terry Pratchett Fan Club at the time. But we got through to Octarine and they put the word out. But we publicised it to our audience. I think it's like a Shakespeare spoon. And from our point of view, we were also changing theatres. We normally used to perform in a theatre in Oxford. And we had been unable to get dates early enough because there were big problems we had with the theatre. They changed the management structure, been taken over by the local council. It was very complicated to book. Now, we got used to the fact that we would be rehearsing a play for 4 or 5 weeks before we actually knew when it was going to be on. We have a range of about 6 dates that all the cast had to keep completely free in their diaries. 6 complete weeks the play might be on, waiting for the theatre to confirm that it was going to be. But the system went wrong because Mr. Pratchett rang me out of the blue and said he was going to come and see it. Now, none of the Pythons ever came to see it, the Python never did. And Tom Sharp certainly never came to see it. Tom Sharp didn't like travelling out of East Anglia as far as he can. So it was a bit of a bolt out of the blue, and we had to have a date and didn't know what venue we were going to use. So we had to do something out fairly quickly, otherwise it would be a little bit silly for this author. So we booked into the place that we do perform in, which is the Unicorn Theatre in Abingdon, which, as it turns out, really suits Disc World much better than the place we used to use, in that it is a medieval, stone-walled, oak-beam building with a mock Elizabethan stage, which really suited with system as well. But from our point of view, we were moving out of Oxford, where we normally perform, into Abingdon, which, although it's only about 8 miles from Oxford, is, as far as Oxford theatre audiences are concerned, the dark side of the moon. They never go there. In Oxford, you face 2 problems in Oxford. If you're doing Amdram in Oxford, there's masses of Amdram in Oxford, but most of it, in volume, is student drama. Now, by and large, town people don't go to see student Amdram, and students, although there are masses of them, don't go to see town Amdram. Town people don't go to see student Amdram because students don't actually tell you when it's on. In Oxford, they say, Midsummer Night's Dream, 5th week. Now, to we townies that haven't been to university, that means absolutely solid. We don't know whether that's January or July. And that's how they advertise it. So nobody goes to them because they don't know when they're on. Oxford town audiences only go and see amateur dramatics in Oxford, unless of course you're doing something which is really mega, when they will actually drive a bit of distance. But it has to be a play that they specifically want to go and see. You can't get them to go and see a play by encouraging them because it's just too far. You can't get the Oxford papers to advertise every East on in Abingdon, because there is an Abingdon spin-off from the Oxford paper, and they'll put it in the Abingdon one, which means obviously Abingdon people will come, and it also means that local spin-offs, Didcot, Wallingford, Wantage, it nearly always goes in those ones as well, but it won't go in the Oxford paper as much. So we were faced with trying to get this thing publicised. When we moved theatres from where we had been for the previous 25 years, we were presenting this unknown writer, nobody knew anything about, that most theatre people wouldn't have heard of, and it was a huge risk. And come a month before the show, it was less than half sold out, in fact much less than half sold out. Even Saturday night was nowhere near sold out. It was embarrassing, so embarrassing that I was really seriously thinking of taking out 4 or 5 rows at the back of the theatre where it would show, so that when Mr. Pratchett came to see it, he would think we were a successful group. Because it would be just too embarrassing to come along, to the first ever production of one of his books ever anywhere in the world in a theatre that only seats 90 and find that it was half empty on a Saturday night. However, it didn't happen. Because from nowhere, all these starts to trickle in, and by the time we actually stayed with the sisters, it had actually sold out on every night, which was, for us, virtually unknown, although it was a much smaller theatre. We'd only ever normally sold out for musicals, or cabaret or Chicago, we'd sell out, but for something like that, which was unknown, it was great. And in the meantime, while we were doing that, we started to communicate a bit more with Terry. And by the time we came to see it, I'd been looking at doing Mort, but I knew from stuff he'd sort of faxed me, because this was before I had email, so we could only communicate in old-fashioned methods. I knew that he was talking to film people about a film version of Mort, and he had sent me a copy of the screenplay that he'd put together. So when he came to see Weird Sisters, and it had gone so well, I said, well, I was sorry to hear that you're doing a film version of Mort, because we really would like to stake in it as well next year. And he said, not being an American, well, why not? What harm can it do? It's not going to impact on film sales, is it? Go ahead. So we did. And it was halfway through that year, I walked into Smith's in Reading, not to the railway station, but the main one, and was buying one of the Cadfile books to read, and I noticed that there was a Cadfile omnibus, a companion, all about the history of England at the time of King Steve that Cadfile was around, and also a sort of guide to all the characters that were in the Cadfile series. And I already knew from somebody at work who was a big Tolkien fan that there was a Middle-earth companion at the time, and I'd also seen, incidentally about 2 years before, the Dickens companion. So I faxed Mr. Crackett and said, "Dear Terry, I've just been to Smith's, I've seen the Cadfile companion. Have you thought about doing a companion to Disc World? Because you've written, of course, 14 books, and that might go down quite well." And about 10 minutes after I faxed it, he rang and said, "Are you suggesting that you want to write this?" I really wasn't. It was just an idea. I just faxed it. I had no thought about that talking at all, and I had absolutely no idea what was involved in writing a companion, or how you went about indexing an entire series of books to produce it. So I scampered off down to Blackwell's Printing, got out very small books on guide to indexing, or indexing for beginners, whatever it was. I thought, well, it looks tedious, but doable. So I rang him back and said, "Why don't we go?" And he said, if you're not going to having a go, he said, "This is an idea that's been around for 2 or 3 years," he said. "We haven't done it so far because we don't know whether we want to get a professional indexer in that knows nothing about Disc World and will therefore be 100% accurate, but the thing will be dry as dust. I have to spend all my time writing loads of stuff to make it amusing. Or whether we let a fan loose on it, who may have pretensions to being a fantasy writer themselves, and may come up with a spin-off, and may not be as reliable in terms of accuracy, because it's got to be accurate if it's going to happen. So if your strength is that you're not a fantasy reader, and you don't have pretensions to be a writer, that's where your strength is." So we started, but unfortunately he then said, "But I'd like to start by mapping Ankh-Morpork," which, from an indexing point of view, is putting carts before horses, because going through 14 or 15 books, writing down everything there is about every single character, place, animal, bird, foodstuff, building, is one thing. But having to go through 14 or 15 books, writing down only the things that relate to Ankh-Morpork, where things are, how long it takes you to walk from one place to another, how far you have to be able to shoot an arrow to be able to hit the eye of the Assassin's Guild, weather vane from the top of the distillery, is one thing. Then I have to go through the whole thing again and do it again after we've done the map, because you couldn't do it. Because the map had a very short timescale, apparently. I couldn't do the whole lot of indexing and then pick out the map bits. I had to do the map first in order to advance it quickly. But I did anyway. And it was good fun, in fact. And it went on to sort of good fun. And then actually the companion actually stopped dead in the water. We got partway through the map, and I had this kind of, you know how you get phone calls from people from a floppy double glazed or County Warden station. I had this phone call from these people who were very, very small scale fantasy publishers. And they rang me and they said, we've been talking to somebody at the publishers, and we think we can help you with this Disc World companion, because we have some professional indexes on our books. We've got a couple of guys in our company who are published fantasy authors, and we really think that we can help you. And I thought, this sounds like we can take your project off you and run off with it, and you won't see it again, ever. So I rang Terry and said, I'm a bit worried about this phone call I've had with these people saying that they'd like to help out, because it sounds to me like it's just drifting off. And he said, if there are going to be arguments about it, then it just won't happen. And it sort of stopped. So I didn't know particularly well then, so I thought, oh, what he means is it's not going to happen. So I stopped, and they stopped. It all just ground to a complete standstill. And then about 3 or 4 months of nothing later, I went to a book launch in London. And I was talking to Terry, and he said, so how's the companion going then? I said, I thought you'd stopped it. And I said, no. I said, I didn't want the other people being involved. And I told whoever it was in Romance, or a publisher at the time, he said, that is, no. I said, just go ahead. So I wandered across the room to the publisher guy, who also was under the impression the whole thing had been kicked completely into touch. I said, so is it coming back on again then? Yeah, great. And so within about 4 days, it was back rolling. That's what we were publishing on a very short timescale, because we'd lost about 3 months, because both of us thought Terry said, that's it, it's all stopped. Nobody dared go back and say, oh. We were too scared of it. So that all rolled on and went on, and then from there, mapped Disc World itself, again, despite what it says in the books, it was Terry's idea to map Disc World. What was surprising was that given that he genuinely didn't have any real map other than any kind of back of his mind map in his head, how consistent the whole thing was. Even in Ankh-Morpork, which is clearly, as you'd expect, being a small city, very compact and not stretchy. Because a city is a city, you can't fiddle with things. There were only a couple of spaces where we had to just stretch the streets a little bit to make it all fit. And there weren't very major things of that. Everything else, amazingly, was there. Not detailed, even though he has to turn left, I've got strictly right, second right to get somewhere. But he knew where within the city places were, and it had been consistent, because his mental image was quite strong, which helped a lot. This world was itself, again, he had vague ideas, but it was a matter of going back to the beginning. We had to go back to where the world started from, like the real world, where the world started from. You don't just say, right, that's what the map looks like now. You have to work out how it got to be where it is, what it started out like, how it moved over millennia to get to be where it is. So we had to do all of that stuff, which was quite interesting for me because I knew nothing at all about plate tectonics and things, like continental drift theory and things. But I learned a lot over a very short space of time. Mr. P, of course, knows stacks about everything, and I don't. So he's more of a science person than I am. So I had to try and at least keep within shooting distance of where he was coming from. Even so, I put the Great Neth, the driest place of Disc World, on the wrong side of the mountain range, so it would actually be the wettest place on Disc World. But we would have been, it was all right. And the same way with the city, that you start out and you map the city. But the trouble is, of course, if you're just drawing, it looks like somebody's designed it. Even if you try and make it look as though it's not designed, it looks designed because you've just sat down and drawn. And it had to look as though it started right at the beginning and then had grown out organically. So we had to sort of keep cutting the map up and moving it around as far as we could, given that certain places have to be a certain distance apart, have to be in certain relationships. And that too was quite fun, although rather irritating, because I was finding myself out of my depth from a technology point of view, because I could only do stuff by photocopying it, cutting it out, sticking it onto a piece of paper, and then tipexing over the mess in between. So the map that I was building up at work on a sort of a roll was thick and crusty with Tipex and with various pieces of paper sort of crit sticked onto it, which I then had to sort of take down to Xerox in, but it was the only place I knew that could do A0 photocopies. And photocopy it, send off a copy to Terry and the publishers and to keep an eye on what was going with it. Because sooner or later I had to produce one that was actually life-size from the publishing point of view, that they could then send to the artist for him to put under a sort of light box and use his tracing for doing the actual map. But I didn't have access to A0 paper myself, so everything I produced had to be produced off of A3 and then stuck together into A0, even if I used a master copy. And it was just a complete mess. And you had to remember to keep numbering them so you knew where you were, which version you'd got. And because, again, because I hadn't got any means, the technology had advanced as far as being able to send JPEGs through the mail. If I wanted to send him anything, I had to sort of photocopy about 8 times in A4 chunks and then fax them to him. So you get little bits of the map. So it was interesting, producing that. And somewhere at home, I still got the master, probably worth a fortune now, got on eBay. And I've probably got to go through it again. But now, when we did the sort of revised middle section of that, more for the publication of Night Watch, it was at least possible to get the publishers to scan it for me. So now I can actually fiddle with it on a computer, so it's much, much easier. And it's much, much easier to correct cock-ups and overscoring and things. Great. So as you get a bit too nitpicky, because when you're seeing something which you normally see sort of life size, you know, it's 25 times normal size, it's very easy to get a bit too bogged down in making sure no lines cross over and these things move a little bit tight. But the map went on to be a bestseller. And as Terry said, it's probably the only map anywhere that's ever on bestsellers lists. And then, just to sort of revamp a bit, before we actually started the map, I recognised, because I said to you before, I wasn't a fantasy fan. Everything I knew about fantasy was having seen Conan the Barbarian. And in Conan the Barbarian, the fantasy cities tend to look North Africa. That kind of North Africa look. And I assumed that that might be the way that Ankh-Morpork was supposed to look. But I'd always seen Ankh-Morpork was looking sort of Jabberwocky, Scrooge, Oliver Twist sort of look about it. And I knew it was important before I even started to map it that I had a reasonable idea that both Terry and I were actually talking about the same thing, otherwise it would be a bit of a disaster. As it was when he tried to explain what a Mandelbrot diagram was by describing it over the phone while I drew it. I faxed it back to him and looked nothing at all like a Mandelbrot diagram. And he said that's about as far out as unlike a Mandelbrot diagram as you could possibly get while being exactly how I just described it. But I went to the internet and found it really right. So I did a few sketches of streets around Morpeth and sent them through. He said, yes, that's right. But he passed those on to publishers, which is how I then came to doing illustrations for the companion. They saw those as well. So a lot of things that I talked about involved Disc World in, which was happened by fluke. Didn't intend it. But happened, things just happened. People sort of saw things and said, oh, you better do that instead. And you just sort of strolled on. In much the same way with the plays. By this time, by the time we got the companion out, my drama club had staged about 4 of the Disc World books as plays. And then the publishers, who were at that point still quite keen to do spin-offs, asked whether they could, said, would I like them to publish the 4 plays? Now, it served 2 benefits for me. One, it was an extra bit of money coming in. 2, it was becoming irritating because I was getting emails and letters from drama clubs who wanted to do one of the plays because they'd done them. The only way I could let them do them was going down to the local photo shop with the paper master I had of the play, running off 20 copies, stapling them, put them in a box, and posting them to them, and charging them for the copy. And it was just a bit irritating. It took time, and I didn't get anything out of it. And when they said they'd like publishing, I thought that's great. 2 things. 1, they can buy their own script. 2, I'll get royalties for production. And then Terry said, well, it would be a nice idea, wouldn't it, if we gave the royalties to the Orangutan Foundation. So, this would be a nice thing if you gave your royalties to the Orangutan Foundation. I think I'd probably need them more than them, but unfortunately, it didn't seem like the way to go. So, since the first one was published, we have given about £60,000 to the Orangutan Foundation. from Productions and Plays. That's only, I would hasten to add, the ones that Transworld publish and the ones that Oxford University Press publish. The Methuen and the Frenchies ones, because they are play publishers, they buy the rights and they buy the script as well, so they deal with all that. They keep the royalties. That's part of their deal for doing it. Again, it's still much more convenient to be photocopying. They're more trusting amateur drama clubs with a copy on CDs. They can do what they like with it. It's difficult now trying to keep them under control with copy of books. They still seem to think they've got perfect rights to retyping or scanning. Do what they like with it. Buy one copy and run off 50 others. There are often some client you point out what copyright rules are in this country. And indeed even in America there are copyright rules. From the plays came the diaries. And then during that, I got the approach from Oxford University Press to do a couple of the plays for their children's series. That's Jonathan Baird and Maisie Morris. I mean, OUP, there was absolutely no money in writing for Oxford University Press. They have no money, no budget. And actually some rules they sell so few that even the pitiful advance they give doesn't get earned out, as they call it, by sales of the scripts. But it is quite nice to go and see them, because those are two that I wrote without writing them for my own drama clubs. I was writing adaptations without, as I nearly always do, having a mental image as I wrote them of how they were going to look and who was going to be playing the parts. We just sort of writing them blind, so it's been quite nice to go and see productions of plays and just see what they look like. Or someone else has just taken them and run with them. And I've never seen them before. I went to see a production of Maisie Morris in Warwick about 4 months ago. Fantastic. And these are done by weenies, they're sort of 10 and 11-year-olds. But brilliant, absolutely brilliant masks, which the drama teacher who directed his husband, who was the PE teacher at the school, had made. And he'd spent ages making two, and gone to her and said, "What do you think?" They're brilliant. Perfect. And he's 35. And it had taken him, I think, 6 months to make them. That was every hour of his spare time. They look absolutely fantastic. It was sick of the sight of those on the stage. They look great. And the kids' ones are great fun. And the enthusiasm they put into it. And just seeing it come off the page and stuff, which must be the same sort of thing as Terry gets when he goes to see the books stage, because it's different. And the first time we went to see, the Weird Sisters, it's you write books, you don't write a B stage, you don't have that in mind. And suddenly it's being stage with somebody else that will literally spin on it. And then, again, when the plays were getting published, it was sort of then drifting. I was then finally getting an email system, which Terry insisted on me getting email because it was getting too complicated to fax information back and forth, particularly as we got further into the last stage of the companion. He insisted I got email because it was just taking too much time to get information back and forth. It was taking too long. I'd send him a copy of the book on a floppy disk. It would take a couple of days to get to him. In the meantime, I'd have written more of it and altered it. He would have altered the one he'd got. We were losing track over which edition, which copy of it was actually up to date, and we needed to have a way of doing it faster. So I got onto the internet, then I got onto Stephen Briggs. Then we decided we were going to do a university scarf to celebrate the end of the companion, and then Terry told Stephen Briggs I was doing everything with anti-university scarf. And I got a small flurry of emails saying, "Oh, we can do them, we have like two," and that's all drifted gently into this with the badges and t-shirts and other sorts of things. Again, without actually even having any wish to sell merchandise, it just slid gently into merchandise as well, and it just became a bit of a downward spiral, or upward spiral. No, that was upward spiral. And in the same way, more or less at the same time, ISIS, that do the unabridged audiobooks, were just in the process of losing Nigel Planer, who was, at that point, going through a stage of being quite well known and hadn't got the time, or indeed as I now understand, having been myself, and I've got 14 books into it, the inclination to keep doing books for them. And they were looking around for someone new books. And Bernard, who was talking to the guy from ISIS about this mutually putting, Vernon put one of their leaflets in with his Clarecraft figures, and then they would put one of their leaflets in about Clarecraft when they sold one of their books. Never actually done anything, but that was the idea. And they were moaning to him about the fact that he was nice to play, and he said, oh, we want to be pretty, of course, because he does. He's a mathematics person, he does that test figure. So they did. So I auditioned for them and then drifted off into doing audiobooks. And because I was doing the ISIS audiobooks, I then got called from the American publishers because they rang somebody in the, I suppose, Colin Smythe, Terry's agent, and said, who does the UK unabridged novels? And he said me, and they rang me and said, do you want to do it for us? And so you chose the wrong guy. Which is nice for me because the Americans record them in London in a nice studio without auditioning. It's pleasant, and they pay more than ISIS. You probably pay a keen. In fact, just in the last 10 days, I've done a bit of research with the Society of Authors to find out what the rates should be for doing audiobooks. And the rates that ISIS pay, given a Disc World novel is about 112,000 words. The rates that ISIS pay are what the Society of Authors say is the bottom end of what you should get for a 28,000 word book. So they're not paying a lot. But bless them, they were the first ones. And it's not like the workers in the vineyard in the Bible. I agreed to work for them for the money they said, but it's a bit churlish to try and renegotiate, particularly if they're local. Sometimes, when it's in the evening, and I record generally in the evening, and I'm sat in a room which literally, I tried it last time I just doing Go Post, and literally, I can stand up in the recording booth and I can touch the side walls like that, and I can touch the front and back walls like that. That's how big the room is that I record in. It doesn't have air conditioning, and by the time I go in there at 5 o'clock to do 3 hours, somebody else has been in there for 7.5 hours. So it's hot, it's foggy, and in any case, given the size of the room, by the time you finish reading for 3 hours, you probably breathe the same air about 4 times anyway, and it just gets a chore. It's so nice to drive to London to do the other ones, the Americans, in a room which is a decent-sized room, perhaps has a small kitchen, with air conditioning that works while you're recording. It makes it worse for the ISIS ones because now I record Going Postal, the unabridged one with the Americans, and then about a week later I have to go into the Oxford studio to record the whole bloody thing again for ISIS because neither of them like each other's versions because the American one, of course, is in American English. I don't have to do the American accent, but their idioms of grammar and some of their idioms of punctuation and some of the different words are all in the American one. They're not all as obvious as things like elevator and suspenders. There are smaller changes which ISIS find really irritating, so you have to report the whole thing twice, which is fine to get the extra money from ISIS, but it can be a bit of a chore when you've done the whole book once and then go to the whole book again. But then that's my problem. I'm just currently halfway through Diggers for ISIS. Did the first half on Tuesday, doing the next half this coming Tuesday. Which is quite fun. A, it's a small book. B, it's an older Disc World book. It's full of Pratchett books, so it's simpler. It's not quite so heavy to read. And there are comparatively few people in it, so character-wise. So you haven't got to keep dozens of voices going, which is quite nice too. And I've just finished marking off the second half of Diggers, and I haven't read Diggers for 10 years, so reading it again is quite fun. I've forgotten how it ends. So reaching the point where I won't spoil it for you, where they're chasing across the quarry in the JCB, and thinking, well, how does this actually finish off? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's quite nice. All very emotional at the end. So for the rest, for me, Disc World has involved a lot of learning, which at my stage in life is a difficult thing. I didn't concentrate when I was at school, and I wish I had, because there's lots of things I'm now having to learn in Disc World. I think to remember all the Latin I used to know, a considerable number of years since I did Latin, and I was to concentrate on things like science and technology and archaeology of cities and archaeology of countries and geophysics and all that kind of stuff, because you have to know it all. Because of the way this world is, you have to know how a city works in order to make it all seem right. Every now and then you get Terry ringing up saying, you work in the Minerva. What is the national consumption, the average daily consumption of meat, butter, milk? When we're doing night watch, you do night watch. You want to know how much people ate per day. And nowadays, of course, it's a lot less than it would have been 100 years ago. This was a period when night watches sort of running. So that you could work out what quantity of animals had to come into the city every day, simply in order to keep the population alive. And it's a staggering amount that comes in every single day, obviously every city, in terms of grain and cows and the stuff that has to go out the other end that you don't use. And that sort of thing intrigues Tony, and I'm finding stuff to intrigue me. And the more we read that stuff, the more we find that I don't tend to read novels. I like him. I don't read novels nowadays. I just read textbooks to find the information out. When we're going postal, while I was doing it for the Americans in London, I was also reading books on the history of the semaphore system, just generally for this I need to know sometime. There may be a Disc World diary based on the semaphore companies, so I just needed to know. And then an interesting little snippet that I came across, which some of you may know already, is that when they were starting off with semaphore, it was the French that really saw the advantage of semaphore, and then the British Navy picked it up, and it was used only for military purposes at the time in order to get messages back and forth in the Napoleonic Wars, primarily. Prior to that, the speed with which you could pass a message from the front line to a general was no faster in Napoleonic times than it was in the time of Julius Caesar. So hundreds of years have gone past, but mankind has not managed to advance the speed of message passing one jot. So they got semaphore going. But as soon as the wars were over, neither country could see any purpose in having any means of passing messages that fast, and we just stopped. And it wasn't until I think the Americans got into it that they realised that it actually had non-military, commercial, which brought in the sort of electronic semaphore, which, strangely enough, predates the manual one. It was, I think, about 100 years, 150 years prior to the first manual semaphores, that some abbot somewhere was working out that you could pass messages electronically down a cable, because they could produce a battery, and it had got wire, but it was a battery which would discharge as soon as you put the charge down the wire. You used one system. So the only messages you could send were, of the sort of yes, no type. One blip for yes, no blip for no. But they didn't know how fast electricity moved. There was no way of measuring it. So, logically enough, what they did was they got about 5 miles of wire, put a battery at one end, and at sort of 20-yard intervals, they had a monk holding onto the wire. and then the abbot put a charge through it. And they all went, ow, at the same time, and they realised that electricity moved almost instantaneously along the way. And you think, if Terry was put in this world, you think that was stupid. But that's real life. And the more I read about real life, the more you realise that there's nothing he can write that comes anywhere remotely close to the way it really is. Which is true enough for things like going coastal. When you've got, as I was saying to Bernard earlier, when you've got a world where you people are prepared to give Bernard £5 for an envelope that contains 6 very small pictures on flimsy pieces of paper, and then flog them on eBay for 150 quid, when they actually have no value whatsoever. You can't even use them to send a letter. They're not like real stamps. But when you read going postal, the fact that there's sort of this, that stamps suddenly take off as a means of passing money around, people, I think Terry got the fact of reality that in the early days, a stamp would change hand about 6 times before it got used for a letter, because people would use them as money. And now it's life genuinely imitating art, where people are buying Bernard stamps, even though they're not real stamps. And you can't actually post them anywhere, although people like Colin Smythe, Terry Station, have surrounded a Royal Mail stamp with Bernard stamps and posted to himself. So the Royal Mail had no choice but to frank Walpole stamps, because the world's of blasphemy, a frank stamp is worth more than an unfrank one. I just think this is very strange. It is almost literally a license to print money, isn't it? Just, I mean, because I was explaining this to people in my drama club, as we're doing this rehearsing going close to the moment. I was saying to them, people are buying these things from Burton. One, there's absolutely no way they're actually worth £5. And two, they're never going to be worth anything else, because obviously everybody that buys them to keep. It's not like you're buying them like you do from the Royal Mail, and some of them get stuck on envelopes and just get thrown away at the end of the day. Everyone that buys them is buying them to keep them. So in theory, they should not go up in price. And they come down here and Bernard says, oh no, they're going for £100 on eBay. And I say, what? They can get them for £5 from you. Why would you buy them from eBay for more than that? You couldn't write it. If you wrote it, you wouldn't believe it. So, to summarise, my passion for this world has been like the little children going to Narnia. I didn't even know I was walking into a wardrobe, and I certainly had no idea I was going to come out of this world. And everything I've done in this world has been like that, unplanned. We've been into it backwards, and so many funny things are happening, which is quite nice in its own way. But the spins have been good fun. It's fun winning the American award for one of the audio books. It's fun when Terry and I went to Germany to see this world plays there. It's just been sort of a laugh. It's been fun doing things like the conventions and things. It's just very odd. When you've been a civil servant before, it's a whole new world, publishing, Disc World itself, which does have a real reality. So, right, I've stopped now. I've gone for as long as I possibly can, so you're going to have to ask me questions.
Still at 3/4 of an hour.
Still no sign of Bernard.
Does the ISIS recording studio have a ceramic seat?
A ceramic seat? No, it doesn't, but it ought to. Yeah. Actually, I think the toilet's bigger. And cooler. No, it doesn't. It has a rather nasty, cheap 1960s cloth dining chair, which creaks ever so slightly, so it's very quiet. When I report in London, I do all the right things. I wear quiet clothes, I like being an assassin. So sort of soft linen trousers, I don't wear a leather belt, I don't wear a jacket, I do wear sort of soft sort of t-shirts and things, and shoes that don't creak, so they don't make any noise. Because the Americans are particularly anal about background noise or any kind of additional noise in audiobooks. ISIS are less so. Whether it's because they're more prepared to spend time editing it out again, which they obviously do, but it's partly because British audiences, so I'm told by the publishers, the audio people in London, British audiences are more used to listening to the radio. They listen to the radio more than you're listening to the spoken word on the radio. And if you're listening to BBC newsreaders, you get heavy breathers and lip smacking and sighing, and if you listen to the radio too, there's papers rustling and microphones being banged, things being dropped. You know, it's just noisy. The Americans don't have that kind of radio culture, so they can't stand noise other than the actual voice speaking. They don't like any noise you opening your mouth, closing it, or swallowing, or sighing, or breathing. And you have to sort of bear all of that in mind while you're reading. But they can edit out massives. I have heard, I mean, they played me tapes of Timothy West recording and Douglas Adams recording, both of whom are appalling. And with Timothy West, they said that what normally happens is when you're reading, you sit down with the book and you just read. You can stop if you go wrong. No hassle, you just stop. They stop, they sort of just wind back a split second, play you in what you've just done, and you start again to make sure you get the picture right. With ISIS, they don't actually do the playback, dropping in, they call it. You just stop and you just re-record it, and then they'll edit it out. They mark it on their sort of CAD thing, and they just go back and re-record it. So there's no problems with going wrong. With the reading like Timothy West, and indeed done some discussion whether here reading his books, it's so disorganised that they can't make them stop and come back in again because they wouldn't actually get anywhere. So what they do is they let them ramble through the whole day's recording, and then somebody has to spend 4 or 5 days in the studio editing it into a seamless whole. Because when I heard Timothy West doing the recording, it was like that evening the coach drove up to the I see, yes. That evening the coach drove up the driveway to the driveway, yes, okay, right. That evening the coach drove up to the driveway. It was a no, I see, yes. That evening the coach drove up to the start again, and it's like that, and they have to take that, crop it all in, and make it into a whole. So there's no problem doing that, and then you can make a certain amount of mouth noise, but they charge. The Americans allow a certain amount of time in the studio for removal of mouth noise and editing. So the recording people are very keen to keep that down to the minimum because they don't want to spend, they have only got a certain amount of time. If they spend more time than that, it's costing them money, the time to take up before you send it to America. So you have to do things like not drinking too much water because that makes you use more mouth noise. Don't drink coffee because that produces phlegm. What they like, the Americans suggest, is a tip for you, is you eat apples. Apples moisture in so they stop getting dehydrated. But they also are slightly acidic, so they dry the mouth out slightly so that it makes you less mouth. That's what I have to do. I have to go along with a bag of chilled apples to scrunch through. And those rare moments when I get chance to swallow every spoon you take.
Which is your favourite character voice to do?
It varies. In Going Postal, I really like doing Mr. Groves, which is just good fun. I quite enjoyed doing Sergeant Jackram in Monsters Regiment. I quite like doing Sam Vines. Funny enough, I don't like, although I do play Lord Bertrand around the stage, I don't actually like doing him in the books because I find it, because obviously when I do him on stage, it's actually me. In an audio book, I find it more difficult to do him and make him sound like him. And I just find he doesn't flow as well. And I enjoyed doing Granny Weatherwax in Captain the Sky. I was a bit scared of Granny Weatherwax because I thought it's a bit of a big mountain to climb doing Granny Weatherwax. And I'm not sure whether Terry likes it. He hasn't come back. He normally reads and says what he thinks of it. And he has pressed his bad side. But I actually quite like doing it. The conversation between her and Tiffany in The Hat in the Sky was good fun. I like doing that. So there is, I don't really have an overall favourite. It's nice to get one. Sometimes you just get one and you can sort of, you just feel yourself in it when you're doing it, and that's really quite the fun to get one of those. Often the main character, but not always. Because what I tend to do is cheat, and the main character is just me. So if it's Polly in Monster Regiment, then it's me. If it's Tiffany, then it's me. Although luckily Tiffany is saying just wanted Tiffany to be just an ordinary voice. And increasingly in the books, and it's true in Going Postal as well, Terry does an awful lot of the sort of authorial bits are often written from the point of view of the main character. So you get dialogue by Tiffany, but you also get lots of stuff that's what Tiffany thinks about things, where you're just actually narrating. And to make it makes it, so you spend most of the time being Tiffany in Hat in the Sky, and so he wanted it not to be a character, he just wanted it to be a voice, because he wanted it to be the authorial voice. And then I found that also works in Going Postal, and also works quite a lot with Polly in Monsters Regiment. So obviously I quite like those, they're easy to do, it's just me, so I'm going to concentrate on it. But I don't like it is when he does tricky things, like in Going Postal there's a very long German word which goes on for an entire line. Now, I didn't actually see it, it's bizarre, I didn't see it coming because he rang me when he was writing it and said he wants a German word that meant, whatever it was, the unbelievably thisness of everything. Asked me to come up with something. So I came up with this word, checked it with a friend who's a German professor, and said, it's an impossible thing to do in German, but that's as near as you can get. And impossible. When I came to read it, I said, you've got this word to read, it lasted an entire line. And I've done that a couple of times, I've done things like that, where I've actually come up with a name for a town and I've had to do it. But the worst one probably was in Amazing, not American, it was in The Wee Free Man. There's a character in there called, I don't know, you'd write that right. No as big as medium-sized job, bigger than wee job. And for about a page, there's a conversation going on between no as big as medium-sized job, bigger than wee job, and another character. And every time he has them going, said, no as big as medium-sized job. I thought, you just think sometimes he just puts those in deliberately. If you read a Pratchett novel, he doesn't have said vines every 5 minutes. You know, he expects you to be able to follow it. But in that one, it was bloody time. So sometimes it just captures you out. You speak to the and he also puts words in that I don't know, like, well, I pronounced it Mandala, he pronounced it Mandala. I did check with OED to see how to pronounce it, but I'd never come across it before. And then told me how I pronounced it, he said, no, it's Mandala. But what can you do?
Is that Scottish accent going to be pretty nice?
I tell you what, I'm glad, I'm really glad that he hasn't done an Australian one since I've been doing the audiobook. I cannot do Australian. I couldn't do Scotland. I wouldn't let any great praise on doing Scottish, but at least it fools the Americans. No, of course, you know, when they think that James Doohan is Scottish in Star Trek, anything will do, won't it? When their idea of Irish is Finian's Rainbow, then you know you can get away with an awful lot in American audiobooks. But the trouble is with Britain, of course, is you're recording them and people who really are Scottish are listening to it and thinking, what is he doing? Because I made a huge mistake in going posting, a really, really huge mistake of making a doorbell DMR Irish. Now, I don't find Irish easy to do, and I don't know why I chose it. And I regretted it, A, because as soon as I started doing it, I regretted it. And then I regretted it again because my producer in London is Irish. And I said to him, I'm sorry, Morris, I said, I've made a doorbell Irish, and I said, it's all going to go disastrously wrong. And it did. She went all over the place. Drifted into northern Scotland, which luckily is not dissimilar to Irish. Even so, he would say, you know, you're up in the Shetlands now. Oh no, you're right now, you're over in Derry. It was a nightmare. That was a real mistake, and I won't do that again. But I've got used to the Scottish. Luckily, he does actually write the Scottish ones in Scottish, so you're halfway there. I mean, his ear for dialect is really good. And sometimes I quite enjoy it, and sometimes I just can't really pronounce Scottish. And then sometimes you get it where you've got two characters, and you've made one accent you're not very happy with, like a door or bell. And then some bugger comes on who's Scottish, and I find I can't then get the Irish one back if he's coming out Scottish. And there was a bit we can spot it in the ISIS version of Going Postal where Junior Postman wrote, he's definitely from sort of the southwest of England, just for a couple of lines, because I just lost it and they didn't notice, and I didn't go back and do it again. Most of the time we saw London sort of ish. But yeah. I don't know how the rest of them do it. I've never had a chance to talk to Senora about how he does it. Although I do know from Morris, because Morris, my producer on the bridge ones, also does Tony's in Bristol, I think. And he does say, occasionally, and I know how he feels, that Tony Robinson sort of goes, I haven't got any more voices. Who is this one going to be? I've run out of things, I've run out of voices. And I know what he means, because I try, as far as possible, to have a consistency in the voices. In that, if they are born and bred, that makes them London. To have a city voice, they've got to have an urban voice. I try to make the dwarfs all have accents that come from mining areas. So They'll be Welsh, they'll be Geordish, they'll be Yorkshire, some will be Scottish. So it has certain logic to it. The trouble is you find yourself backed into a corner because sometimes characters all turn up from different books at the same time. Because I made Miss Macalariati going postal Edinburgh Scottish. I then found that within a space of about 10 pages, she appeared, and then one of the more obscure wizards who I'd also made Edinburgh Scottish, and he was called Neville, was stuck that way, appeared, and then Dr. Lorne appears, who I'd also made Edinburgh Scottish. It was just... These are not the same bloody scene talking to each other. You know, sometimes you just paint yourself into a little corner because you just obviously can't tell they're all going to come into the same room at the same time. So I have my sort of file effects has a watch of index pages with little things to remind me what the voice is supposed to sound like. Sometimes they're actors, sometimes they're parts. I don't do impressions, but it just somewhat gives me a shortcut rather than going very elderly Scottish with lisp. You know, if I can sort of think of somebody and go, right, I don't actually do the impression. I know what I'm thinking of, nobody else would recognise it, but it just gives a bit of a shortcut. I'm not very good at American either. I was a bit mortified when Terry wanted
The American accents in this world.
he wanted I can't remember her name, the one that had 2 bodies in After the Sky. He wanted her to be American. I wanted to do her American. And he wanted Morris to be American. He said, do it like Sergeant Bilko. I said, Terry, I can just about manage to keep it on the American continent. I can't do the specific Americans. You know, if it sounds American, it would be a miracle. I once did we did a stage version of a play called The Man Who Came to Dinner. And the central character, which I was playing, is supposed to be a sort of anglicised American, sort of mid-Atlantic American radio star personality. And what I thought refined this wonderful sort of mid-Atlantic accent. And then a friend of mine came around and come afterwards and said, I think it was a good thing you didn't try and do an accent for this one. Nobody knows what I'm supposed to do. You know, I should write things about Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean, but nobody would recognise it. It just sort of makes me think about what I'm doing. It's nicely to bouquet, but you'd be hard pressed to spot. If only I could do accents, much better. And you could get quite good jokes in if you could actually, good at impressions, you could get some quite good jokes in if you pick. Work hard. And people say, oh, but Michael Paynter always does them as Irish, or Michael Paynter does them as Michael Paynter. I can't do his voice, and he can't do mine. You know, different people, backgrounds. It would be impossible. In any case, I don't necessarily agree with all the voices he did, so, you know, where they come from. So, different. I'm not saying he's better or worse.
Is there a book lurking out there that you'd love to turn into a play?
Yeah, there are a couple. I would still would have liked to have done Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but too late. Although they got a film of it, the film's too late. There was a point when we were still trying to get through to Disney, which was one of the things I read from them was, it's just getting to the point now where it's a bit out of date. You know, the humour was just. I said, if you can do it now, you probably won't ever film it. He said, no, of course, they don't end up doing it, is it? I still would like to do it, I still would think about it. And I would like to have done Princess Bride.
That would be brilliant.
But as I said, bastard. Sorry, that's not off the record. Well, no, I mean, it wouldn't have cost you very much, would it? I'd be making a dent in anything. It's culty, that would make good fun to play, and it would be good fun to do. But yeah, occasionally you can sort of really good to go in like that. Sometimes not enough time to do it. There's always next Disc World shutting at the door.
How many of the recipes in the cookbook did you actually try out?
Only about 8, I think. I tried the figgins. I tried the dried frog bill. I tried the one I saw several times. Vegetable casserole thing with I've done things. I've done sort of time. I've eaten bread and butter, drunk water with them. But no, I only cook for myself. I can't be bothered with that stuff. It's all very complicated in a way. I don't eat puddings. I'm trying to eat puddings. Tina tried one. She told us. She was supposed to be on the contract to try them all. None of them should be deadly apart from all the arsenic, which we are very serious about. Only the arsenic.
So I came in a bit late, so it's maybe covered already, but is there any possibility of a play being written straight to a play from that bit into a book?
I mean, Terry writing a play and then me adapting into a book. No, I mean, we've come close on 2 occasions. No, when I say we've come close, what I mean is we have, on 2 occasions, he has been writing the book and asking me how it would be staged while he's writing it. Masquerade was one. He didn't compromise the writing, but he was writing it and asking me whether this scene could be staged, whether I could do that, couldn't do it and Lear, could we do this, could we do that. But he's not inclined that way, and he has had opportunities to write screenplays himself, not for Disc World, but has declined. So I don't think he'd ever get to that point. But he does have very definite views on what he thinks will and won't work. They're not always the same as mine. But it's his Disc World, so he wins.
So you have an example of something that you've really disagreed about in terms of staging something that you've sort of gone ahead and done something and you thought it would be terrible.
No, I've never gone ahead and done something that he thought would be terrible. But I have put things in plays that I didn't like because he wanted them in there. I'm trying to think which one it was. There are 2. Commonly, and it's happened in several plays, I'm trying to think of one while I'm going along. Terry tends to write very long codas to his books. They stop, and then 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 they stop. Little series of stops. A bit like the last Lord of the Rings film, where it kept stopping and he kept thinking, just stop the bloody thing. And he tends to do that. He likes to round up all the edges and tidy things up. Masquerade, I'll just tell you how that happened. In Masquerade, spoiler space here, when Saltcellar dies, that to me dramatically was the end of the play. Theatrically that worked. It was an operatic setting. The principal character died. Agnes then sort of screams, play ends. Terry wanted to see with Granny Weatherwax and Agnes and digging the privy as well. I didn't want it. The play was already quite long enough. And dramatically it adds absolutely nothing to the play whatsoever. It's just important for Agnes and Granny Weatherwax's future. And we didn't agree with that, so I did it. That does happen quite a lot, although bizarrely enough in Monstrous Treasure Book you want to cover the scenes again, we liked. It's the end where, it was at the end where Polly goes back to rejoin the army and meets the 2 girls and they all got together, and it sort of rounds it all off with her saying that they're her. And I liked it because it moves the whole thing round to a circle and enabled me to finish with the same music that I used at the start, the same. But he didn't, he always could finish a couple of scenes earlier. So I have left that in the script and said that I think you missed the last 2 scenes. We were desperate to get to the pub earlier, but actually we liked it with the whole thing. Because I was like, cast the chance of cutting the 2 scenes. This was offering a chance to be in the pub, 5 minutes earlier, and they still wanted to be left in. So by and large, he wins. Not always. Sometimes. So we accept that things don't work. There's a couple of things in Going Postal where I've said, look, it isn't, actually no, not true. I've been trying to argue with him that I didn't need the golems to be made out of, to be clearly made out of pottery. He wants them to be definitely sort of terracotta-y and sort of ill-formed, the way they describe the book. And I said that dramatically, all that was important was to get across to the audience the fact that they are robots, effectively. It's an iRobot gang. The audience just need to think of them as a mindless automaton. That's all that's important about them for the play. Disc World, yes, it's important you get the whole golem thing, but you can't, not everyone in the audience is going to know what golems are, and you don't want one of those M and Bonds things where they go, so Bond tells you know about golems, so you can have a long big question and say, oh, it's made a pocket, so, you know, their eyes glow, because it's not actually important. You can say it, but it's not important. All that's important is things like robots. And I was going to put the golems in suits of armour, because the RSC have got lots of moulded plastic suits of armour. Ideally, even to the fat people in my drama club. But he was going, no. If they're going to be in suits of armour, you've got to paint them all terracotta. I was going, Terry, the Royal Shakespeare Company are not going to let us paint armour terracotta. You can get terracotta paint you can wash off. Can you? And then, just to prove me wrong, my lighting man said, yes, you can actually. Yes, they use it at the Royal Opera House. But you have to power wash it off. You have to have a power spray to get it off. And I thought, yes, that's very good for the Royal Opera House, because they probably have a power spray in their back garden, and they can just go out there and spray it. Us, we would have to go down to Tesco's and wash them there. We're staging the play in January. It's a cold January. The power things aren't going to be working. We have one day when we can power wash the RSC's armour. It has to go back to Monday after the show. So the Sunday afternoon is the only time we can wash the armour in order for it to dry and for returning. If we miss that window of opportunity, we're probably a couple of £1,000 out because then I can buy the stuff. So, all right. Yeah, that's those. It's down to me come back to the other ideas. Which is a pity because the armour would have been fine. Would have done. And I could have had loads because the arms were relatively cheap. They're obviously going to charge me down. But that's not going to happen. And unfortunately, then I've got to try and find something then which will still look effective when we've got complete cats. You know, man in orange boiler suit with a funny hat on. But he wasn't having it. I tried to persuade him several times. He was immobile. It is his Disc World.
You talk about Master's Regiment, and you're doing the voices for the book. Was there an inherent problem with the deliberate gender confusion of the whole book?
Actually, no. I think in some ways it's easier. It was damn sight easier in an audiobook than it was on stage. Because an audiobook, I don't tend to do female characters with squeaky voices anyway, because you can't sustain it because like that doesn't matter more either. You have to think more in terms of character than their gender. So you didn't need to deliver any of the female characters in a way to make it obvious that they were female. So in some ways it was actually easier, because you didn't have to compromise. Who hasn't read Monsters Regiment? Who might read it?
Don't worry about it.
No, I don't want to ruin the end for you.
I've pretty much figured out.
Right. So I didn't need to compromise with Jack Gray. It wasn't necessary to try and be both sides of his character, because it wasn't important. Because it wasn't a con. Whereas when you're staging it, obviously most of the people who are going to be girls have got to be girls to start out with. Not Jack Gray, because that was too difficult. There's no way, unless you had a really, really unattractive female person in your drama band, could you possibly expect the audience to believe that a central character from beginning to end was male, and then go, oh my God, at the end. Although bizarrely, the girl who played Maledict, who was 18, tall, slim, and quite large in her chest, the audience not only believed she was male, one of her best friends didn't recognise it was her. Let me stress, all that was different about her was that she was wearing white tie tails and a short black wig. And another woman in the audience thought she was quite an attractive teenage boy.
Big petrol muscles.
But you know, the only thing that worked, this is really strange, because when they were rehearsing, they get changed into uniforms at one point in the play. She's wearing the evening dress, with that sort of white bib waistcoat over the evening dress that only has a front and no back. And she was getting changed, and she took the waistcoat off, the tunic off. I said to Lucy, I said, just leave the waistcoat on, because when you take the waistcoat off, it becomes far too obvious. And give them the waistcoat, they're not sort of tight or anything, they're just but that seems to be an object of it. Funny when you get rid of it. Just goes to show, you know, life imitating art and things.
Comes down to the actor as well, isn't it? So the mental, if they create their own mental image of themselves, and the audience will buy that.
I think it comes down more to the audience that we are conditioned now to accept any crap. You know what I'm talking about? If something is presented in front of us, we are quite happy to switch off our believability circuit and go, yeah, I'm buying this.
Take the story as it's telling.
I know there's a lot in that, yes, and even if people think they've seen through it, they're not quite sure if they have, because you know in Amjam there's a certain tendency for sort of sex drift, because you don't have the right numbers of males and females, so there has to be a certain amount of spreadability. So people were not quite sure which way things were going and whether they were women because nothing but men, you know. And
I do capable reenacting, half our fighters are female, but they're portraying male characters. You buy into the fact that these females are male, even within the group.
yeah.
Sometimes you forget that some of our group members, when they're out on the battlefield, are women. And it's just, you get into that mindset, and after a while when you're watching people up on stage, are they just women pretending to be male characters, or are they...
Yes, you get a kind of double bluff thing.
Yeah.
That level you can come for totally convincing. And my days of 17th century reenacting, I can fairly well guarantee that on my last visit before going to the battlefield, I would get all the outable ladies.
Because we did a stage version of Sleuth once, and just to ruin the plot for those who haven't seen it, there are only two people in Sleuth. One of them plays at least two people, possibly three or four, but plays two people actually on the stage. And I played that one. When I came back in as an inspector, now we gone to reasonable expense and trouble to try and make it different. It's difficult when you've got a big nose. You can't make a big nose smaller. If you've got a small nose, you can add a big nose to it and make yourself look different. So we altered the shapes slightly, and I had them as start. I had sideburns that I shaped them off and then had a stick on them, so I played them pieces with a ridiculous accent and was panned out, so I used to be thin then. And those people that didn't know me, as you say, bought into it. And those people that did know me thought, oh, obviously somebody's dropped out and he's having to play both parts. So it still worked. People, the magic of theatre, people just get into it and they just...
And people will accept any crap.
There's been the same thing's happening because quite a lot of male characters in the book are being played by women. Now some of them will play them as women, and some of them, because they don't work as women, will just play them as a kind of an androgynous combination. Our Reacher Guilty is played by a female. But although there's, where Shakespeare referred to as Mr. Guilt, there's a sort of a slurring of sort of move about it. But she's not. She's more like sort of Gina. Not as bad as Gina Davis. She's more like Gina Davis in an awful pirate than she is a female. But she has the benefit of being Canadian, so that North American accent adds a manipulative and devious touch to her, which just sort of works in its own. Particularly when Richard Guilty's banging on about all that corporate stuff about, embracing diversity and saying who was great in North American accent. Right, anything else? I haven't booked in until 6:30. Well, another 45 minutes. We can do it. God knows what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, though.
Another 10, 15 minutes.
What?
Me?
Yeah, ask me something.
So people here have to ask you a question.
Apart from doing, obviously, the next Pratchett book, what other author stuff do you want to adapt and do?
I don't get to read enough now. It's also old stuff like the guide thing. But I don't tend to read enough fiction now to form an opinion about it. You do get things like, I tend to sort of see things more like, what go and see a film and think, oh, that's good. And it's one of course it's American. You know, because we decided, at the time that we were going to try and do Princess Bride, two things were driving it forward. One, a lot of us liked the film, and two, we'd all been to see Pirates of the Caribbean, all loved it, all decided we wanted to do a play with a bit of swashbuckling in it, perhaps a sword fight, because we'd had no sword fight for donkey's years, and we thought we'd like to do one good sword fight. And so we started then looking around for alternatives and thought, just for a brief second, and literally only a microsecond about Pirates of the Caribbean, and thought, oh no, it was Disney. Snowball and hell sort of just drifted across your mind all at the same time. You hadn't even got a chance to finish the sentence before you went on. So, well, I suppose, yes, Anthony Pope wrote Prisoner of Zenda. That's one I like. Not exactly my first choice, but it does have swashbuckling in it. that might be on the card at some stage. And he's out of copyright as well, so that's good.
Yeah, I think there's an appetite for fantasy theatre. I mean, the actual fantasy.
An appetite for it, I mean, generally.
Yeah. Are there enough bodies out there to put on the scene?
Yeah, I mean, well, there is the Pratchets still. I mean, going postal tickets are going faster than the last two, so we went through a phase where we just thought it was getting slower because obviously there are more people out there doing it, and therefore people don't need to drive down from Edinburgh to see us do it because they can go to Edinburgh to see it done. But that seems to have sort of picked up again. So there is a market out there. I mean, the Philip Pullman thing to do it well in London. So there is a market.
You look at fantasy cinema.
And fantasy cinema. But it doesn't seem to have drifted into Disc World. But I think part of that is just that.
There's enough people out there that are going to, try and go to it.
I think there would be a big market for Disc World. I don't think Terry is that bothered. He only listened now if somebody came up with what was obviously the right proposition. The trouble is, it takes a little while to get to that point. And there's an impression from having sort of been with him round the roundabout several times, people coming up with offers and they all drift off. The trouble is that one person in a film company, one person individually, thinks that would be a good project. They enthuse a bunch of other people and get to the point that they then approach Terry and say, I'd like to do this, what do you think? And then they die or they get married or they find something else to do, and they drift off. And what's left isn't as imbued with Disc World, and so the thing starts drifting away from where it should be. You know, that's right. You need to be able to get a lot of money, preferably European money, that would pay for it, and in the right direction. You would think that, I thought that of the little bits I read of the books, I thought the films were very good adaptations of the books. They're much better adaptations of the books than the film adaptations of the Harry Potter books are. They're more pedestrian. The Lord of the Rings one took more liberties, but still got the sort of the what people like me remembered of it right. So I would, you would think that the people that produced Lord of the Rings, they've only got one more book to do, rather than turning to C.S. Lewis and doing like Wardrobe, would think, well, this guy here has written 26 best-selling novels and keeps churning them out. Might he not be worth approaching? But apparently not. Oh, that's gone. Yeah. No, I don't imagine that Tolkien estate were much of a Warcraft, were they?
No.
I think to be fair to her, she was probably more amenable to the we're Coca-Cola would like $48 billion to adapt one of your books. Yes, there you go. Whereas Terry would go, no, sod off, I don't drink Coke. I don't want to your American company. However, the thing I mentioned earlier, which when we first started doing the auction about the C.S. Lewis thing, what we'd done when I was sitting listening to C.S. Lewis and Tolkien reading their books, we gathered might actually be on the sort of the second DVD, when they do the DVD of the upcoming mega film production of Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, which is, I think, a Canadian, New Zealand tie-in. There's a possibility that our documentary might be on the tie-in DVD. It would be really cool. We got paid some more, but it was good fun.
That's a lot of you.
Well, most film companies, this is really small, really small scale filming, really small scale filming. Normally when you do filming, I've done quite a lot of film extra over the years, when you arrive at when they're doing the filming, there are about 10 very large trucks full of lighting and sound and makeup and Winnebagos and huge things selling, giving away burgers in buns and things. This one, there were 2 coaches, one very small coach and the other one that was just crammed with all the makeup and hair. People wandered around with a tray with makeup and bats on the them. And all we did was just sat in the people truck, which is where the Indians used to be. About 10 of us with Anton Rogers, the guy who played Tolkien. And it was sort of semi-rehearsed, semi-scripted, and semi-ad-lib. The director was tremendously enthusiastic. The same guy that did the Joss Acton version of Shadowlands on television a few years back. He wrote that on the stone. And all we had to do with the rest of the evening was just react to Anton Rogers, the guy named Tolkien. They were 2 mega stars at the time that were sparring with each other about their different worlds. And Anton Rogers and the other guy were extremely good at just chucking stuff around. They were very funny, so we had to just sit and laugh. It was fun. I don't know how much you'll see in that film.
Do you ever wish that you'd made a career out of acting?
No. I mean, yeah, great if you were Michael Caine or Johnny Depp, But for every Michael Caine and Johnny Depp, there were sort of 2.5 million guys that spend all their time cleaning out laboratories or working at McDonald's. It's not even anything to do with whether you're any good. You've got to look around the people that get to be on television and in film. You see, it's nothing to do with being good. It's just being in the right place at the right time. A bit like me and Disc World. Just happen to be in the right place when things happen. But it would be great if you could do it and make a living out of it, and get all the great parts. It would be great to be a villain in a Bond film, or to be the next Jeffrey Rush in Pirates of the Caribbean 2. But that doesn't sort of just happen. So it's better, I think, anyway, doing Amtrak, because that way you get to have a much bigger say of what plays you do, what parts you play. You get a much wider variety of parts to play, because there aren't many professional actors that have been Don Quixote in Man of the Mancha, the MC in Cabaret, Sheridan Whiteside in Man Against Dinner, Milo in Sleuth, all the range of things I've done over the years. This just wouldn't happen. No matter who you are, you're not going to get that sort of range of parts. So it's been more interesting. It's all about fishes and ponds, isn't it? I've got next door to that. Short con, I think. I only have to use one voice to get paid. It'd be a laugh.
Are there any Disc World novels that you haven't yet done in place, but you'd like to?
Yeah, there are 2 or 3. I meant to do Feet and Play, and that one slipped, and then just never got round to it. I would like to do Pyramids. And I wanted to do Reef Man, but effectively we would only have done the High Plains Drifter bit, not the supermarket trolleys, because that was irrelevant. And when you adapt it, you just take all that stuff and just chuck that in there, because it's irrelevant to play. But the High Plains Drifter stuff to make quite a nice play, and I would like to have done Reef Man, but again that was another just sort of wafted past and went. Because the trouble is, he keeps writing them. And I was really keen on Feet and Play, and he was quite keen on us doing it. What I liked was, I enjoyed the whodunit bit of, or not whodunit, but like whodunit, how do you do it, bit of Feet and Play. And I was looking forward to the challenge of trying to get as much of that across in a play in the same way, so that the audience would still have that same sort of time of finding it out, while keeping it relatively simple. But it just didn't happen. I think we came close about 2 years ago, but as I started to drift towards Speed of Play, he was writing another one, and as soon as he started telling me about that, I thought, I have to make a much better play. But whether I read the world, I don't know. It's just the thing, he sort of, I think this one wasn't going, no, Monstrous Regiment wasn't going to be stateful. When he started writing, he said, I don't think you'll have one to do next year, he said, because the one I'm just starting on isn't going to be stateful. Okay, fair enough. And then after about a month, he rings up and goes, actually, there's a few scenes here that work quite well staying. So we know where you are. He's going, yep, this will be all right. There's a good part for you in this one. And then you're on. Because the next one, he started off by saying, I'm not sure this is stateful. And now he's ringing up and going, oh, actually, yes, of course, you're going to need to get a Vimes for the next one. He goes, because it's a very Vimes intensive one. Because our Vimes died earlier this year. And so it was rather fortunate in that kind of, in a sort of mirror of when Q finally appears in the last Bond film, when he's just going down in that sort of car hoist. You think it's all very mawkish, they didn't know he was going to die. And that's the last thing he does in the Bond film is he's going around saying, never let me see you cry over this, never let me see you bleed. And I think that's really spooky. And it's just spooky that last year, Monstrous Regiment, Vimes is a peripheral character in Monstrous Regiment. He doesn't need to be in the play. But about 3 or 4 years previously, we've done The Truth. And when we were doing The Truth, the guy that was playing Sergeant Colon was dying of cancer. Cancer of the colon was dying. And he wasn't needed to be in The Truth, but I thought this is the last chance he's going to have of being in a play with those people. So I'll leave that scene in at the beginning, just one very short scene. And the same thing with Monstrous Regiment. We thought Trevor's probably not going to make it from the Disc World play. I don't need Vimes, but I'll leave that little, two tiny little scenes in that he was in. And then lo and behold, I'm going postal. Although Vimes is in the book, as those who've read it will know, he's just referred to as being in the room. You're in a room, a crowded room, Lord Better and I is talking, and he says, I'll just ask Commander Vimes to take these people away. And you think, oh, Vimes is there. So he's not necessarily in the play. So this year, which would have been a really tricky year for us to replace him, he's not in the play, in the book. That's just spook and bizarre. Unfortunately, that gives me less than a year to find another one.
I've been asked on a number of occasions if people could get hold of recordings of your plays.
Yeah, ISIS worth thinking about that, but like most things with ISIS,
does it need to be ISIS?
It doesn't need to be ISIS.
Because there's no doubt, I mean, it's not just the odd one or two, but there's a number of people who I speak to come into place and we talk about the ISIS books, and it's not price or anything like that. It's they really would like to have an audio play. And how technically feasible is it for you to record a play when it's going on?
When it's going on, I would say virtually impossible, because the sound would be very difficult, very, very, very difficult. You'd need to go in and record it. That would be feasible. But the bad news for Gollancz is it would cost money. But BBC do audio plays.
Yes, they do.
But I keep saying to ISIS, why don't they repackage their damn books so they can go on bookshop shelves so they sell more? An idea that came to me in a brilliant street like this, somebody else told me about it. Because when I got my first audio book from Harper, the American people, the Americans just put all the cassettes, not in boxes, just the loose cassettes, in a box. That it's only the size of 10 cassettes rammed into a box. They're just loose. So they can get them onto the shelves in American gas stations and bookshops for people to listen to. ISIS, of course, produced theirs naturally enough in those big library things, because the vast majority, historically, of ISIS's sales have been to libraries. Disc World is one of the few areas where they sell as many to private individuals as they do to libraries. And I've said to them on a couple of occasions, it's not going to cost a fortune just to get a cover box printed, but they won't. And I said to them, BBC do it.
Yeah.
So we did keep going.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Briggs.